Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the day with us, the evening, wherever you may be. So far today, we've heard from an executive perspective on the future of standards. We've heard from customers and how they're hoping to implement this content into various workflows and programs. So now we're going to hear from those people who are responsible for the revenue streams that sustain their respective organizations and the business models that go along with that. So with this, I am happy to present Marion Winkenbach from Voight to kick off this session. So Marion, you are up.
Thank you very much, Lakshmi. Thank you. Welcome to our third section of the Technology Forum. We find ourselves again in a phase of upheaval, on the move, somewhere between PDF and smart standards, or in other words, exploring the terra incognita for future business models. Doesn't run like I want, I'm sorry.
Yeah, now it runs.
Now it runs.
There was a delay, I think.
That's the German delay, I'm sorry. Why this topic and such a discussion at a meeting where technologies, data formats and standards, technical development approaches and IT projects are exchanged? In the keynote speeches, Sergio and Christoph covered a wide range of topics, explaining the upheaval in standardization and the need for transformation on the way to smart standards. Gerald, Peter, John, and Ralph Sporer have outlined the future standardization needs in their respective sectors. Pablo Corrons, Jim Thomas, Raul Rivas, and I would now like to take up this arc and continue it in this interview session, together with Mike Arnold from UL and Michael Thompson from SAE. We want to approach the terra incognita with the relevant questions, starting where we always start, with our customers, and the well-known question that is nevertheless central to the development of business models. What do customers want? Is it standards? Do they want smart standards? Probably not. What do customers really want? Maybe reaching their targets. As there are compliance, security, application, conformity. Ralph Sporer added some more. He told us from speed, flexibility, quality, efficiency. Regards from Henry. Probably everybody knows this quote. Ralph also quoted him. Or for a more contemporary example from Elon. Everyone is familiar with these quotes. They may seem hackneyed, but the core message still applies. In a figurative sense, what is the actual added value of an offer for customers? If the need for standards and standardization changes, driven by AI, new digital processes and smart technologies, what business models need to be developed? And moreover, we are here today with this topic because we see it as a joint task of working together with technical experts and product developers on these issues at an early stage. And because we want to sensitize product developers and salespeople to those issues that are up for discussion and clarification due to the thrust of smart standards in view of their impact on existing business models. Here are a few questions we will encounter in our terra incognita. What are the business opportunities for future competencies in the development of smart standards? Which cooperations within and outside the standards community are helpful and/or indispensable? Which changes in standardization development are a prerequisite for efficient processes? Copyright. How do we protect our content and ensure the traceability of our content data? What are the requirements on data security? What are the real added values of more granular standards in the future for our customers? What future user experiences do our customers expect? And last but not least, is there a willingness to pay for the new added values and the new quality of data? So let's start together exploring the terra incognita. Pablo, would you take over, please?
My turn? Okay, let's be a little bit disruptive and constructive in parallel at the same time. So I prepare a very simple slide. And what I'm going to do is to share with you three user needs that we have, let's say, discovered at our focus group organizing during this year. This is just a very simple slide. I want Hans to close the slide in 30 seconds. Main conclusion, obviously, is that we can classify our user of standards in three different ways of classification. We can classify them according to the level of participation in standards development process. We can classify them, obviously, according to the sector, and we can classify them according to the size of the company. That's clear. We all know that. All of them, depending on the classification that we will follow, have in common the user needs that you can see on the screen in the middle. So all of them wants to have a powerful, intelligent search engine, links to legislation. They all want to have, for instance, requirement specification. That's clear for me. So please close the slide. Let's go through three examples. Regarding users of standards which are participating in the standardization process at a particular focus group, some of them told me, Pablo, listen, in standards, only 20% of the information is included. The other 80% is zero. We know that because we are participating in the standardization process. At the end of the process, the standards only show the other 20% of the important information. So, well, interesting. Yeah, aware that this statement came from those who are participating in standardization. Our main concern is the market surveillance activity. It doesn't work. So Pablo, be careful because it doesn't work. Because we are investing a lot of money in participating in standardization, in drafting standards, in testing laboratories, but at the end, bad manufacturers can place their products into the market without spending any euro or any dollar, it doesn't matter. So this is the biggest problem we have. I think, okay, what can we do? What's the key message that I want to share with you all is that while investing into knowledge, while drafting added value products, we have to consider not only our customers themselves, but also those actors which are in the surroundings. So we have to use technology for helping our customers by providing added value product to those, let's say, external actors, as for instance, market surveillance authority. That is a key message that I would like to share with you. Regarding if we classify standard users amongst different sectors, one sector in particular share with us their concern. They said, well, Pablo, we can spend, let's say, 2, 3, 5 days, and at the end of the process, we can understand the standard. It's not an easy task, but finally we can understand the standard. But we have a problem even when we try to sell our product within the same city. Yes, because our products are some installation product. It depends on the district within the same city. If we have to apply those specific requirements of those specific standards, or by the contrary, we have to apply the full standards plus an additional standards in the building which is in front of that or the previous building because it's a different district. So Pablo, I don't know if you can help me. No, but once again, we are in north Spain, thinking about how we can once again help our customers by providing, I don't know, let's say specific services to those local authorities. Because regarding national authorities, we all know that the problem is completely, it's nothing to do with systems of standards. And the third example that I would like to share with you, which is fully in line in my own perspective with what we have exposed today, is an example or a need coming from micro companies, micro enterprises. And they say, Pablo, we are using a mobile phone every day. We at work, we are using a mobile phone, taking pictures of many different products, installations, and devices, and we have a software we mentioned in the previous session. I think that Peter mentioned. We have a software where by using that picture, the software told me everything about it, the characteristics, the weight, the price, but we missed the information coming from standards. There's nothing about standards. So can you help me? And I said, wow, we can. Of course we can. That's what we have discussed today. I think that all of us are investing in what we call machine readable standards, or even better, machine readable content, as Sergio Musica presented at the beginning of this session. So in my view, these micro companies are more or less linked or fully in line with our future users of standards. So I think that as a conclusion, I think that we are in the right way. Let's say preparing or drafting standards in that way with this smart standard. So we need it for the future, even though some of our current customers are not demanding those kind of standards yet. Finally, and last but not least, if you remember the slide, I put on the right side of the slide a figure trying to show that we must keep balance between the user needs, technology, and the return of the investment. Because this is a particular business. This is not a purely normal business, and we have to measure, this is my point of view, the return of the investment, not only in euro, dollars, but also in the sustainability of the system. That's it, my 5 minutes, the information I would like to share with you. I hope it was interesting for you. If you have any, or you want more examples, I can share with you because we have hundreds of examples, this, just 3 of them. And now Jim Thomas will talk about evolution. So Jim.
Took me a minute there to find the unmute, Pablo. So thank you very much, Pablo and Marian. It was great working with you on the session for the Technology Forum. And I just want to start out by saying thank you to Lakshmi and the Advisory Council. They put a lot of time into this event, and I think it's been going over very well so far. And thank you to all the other presenters before me. I found it very interesting to hear the perspectives from the executive levels and then the customer level. And it's nice to have an opportunity from a commercial standpoint to have a few minutes today. Just a little background on me. My name is Jim Thomas. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at ASTM. I'm proud to say that at this point, I can say that I have 20 plus years in the standards business in the commercial area. I started my career in 1999 with IHS. I was a regional sales manager for them for 7 years. In 2006, I moved over to ASTM, so I can say that I have 22 years in the standards business, in the commercial part of the business. And on my slide here, you'll see that it says it's an evolution and not a revolution. And I really wanted to take the opportunity to tell my peers and colleagues and other SDOs and NSBs that in my experience in the 22 years that I've been in the business, I've learned that there hasn't been a real revolution with regards to the customer expectation of technology. And I appreciate the words of the executives that we've heard of, and I appreciate what the customers want. But as an organization, and I'm giving you this perspective from my ASTM perspective, we deal with about 148 different industries, and I can tell you that they are really all over the place with their ability to handle our digital transformation. So that's something that we have to really, take into consideration is when we're working with a number of different organizations. They may be in phase 1 or phase 2, maybe they're in phase 3, but across 148 industries, there's a very small percentage of people that are looking for the standardized data in the way that maybe some of the presentations brought to you today. And no matter what anybody says, this is not completely happening tomorrow. We're talking about it, but from a commercial perspective, we just have to be aware that people are going to be looking for a return on investment in this. And since a very small percentage of industries are ready for this, I want to set expectations for people out there that there's not a whole lot of low-hanging fruit with regards to revenue. So if you're not in phase 4, 5, or 6 with your digital transformation, don't worry. You won't be irrelevant. You still have customers and members that you have to support, and just be aware of that. So, just because that everybody's not there doesn't mean it's not happening right now. I get approached personally by a number of organizations every week asking for the rights to take parts of our content and put it through their PLM or put it through another system or what have you. Right now, people are asking for it. Software companies, like you've seen today, are asking to take parts of our content and put them in their products. Resellers are asking to do that, and other NSP and SDO partners are currently asking to do that as well. I was really happy to see that ISO had it on the road to be able to talk about the commercial part of it. For some of us, it's happening right now, and we have to address it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And we as intellectual property owners need to be careful that we're not inviting the fox into the hen house. I don't know if everybody around the world will understand that statement, but really we have to be careful that we're not creating our very own disruptive technology without a plan to back it up. And if the IP owners that are on the call today need to be very careful not to let third parties take their work without having answers to at least some of the questions that I'm going to put up on the screen right now. Okay, and this is really going to expand a little bit on Marion's introduction here. But at ASTM, about 77% of our revenue comes from the sale of our publications. So my very first question is, what is the IP protection plan? When a software company decides they want to put our data to our #1 selling standard in their software system, where's the revenue that comes from that? Another question is, what is deemed official for legal compliance? And, I think we're focusing quite a bit on the enhancement of the manufacturing process, but really standards are used for many different reasons: for trade, for market access, for market exclusion. So what is the official version of data or the document for legal compliance reasons? Something that I think that maybe we touched upon earlier in the day today is, how will technical committees be affected? I think that that's an entire part of the conversations that organizations are going to have to be prepared for, because we will really have to take a look at how that is structured within our organizations. And that really doesn't have anything to do with what I've heard today. That seems to be an elephant in the room that we're not really prepared to do anything about. And another question is, and I know this doesn't apply to me because I'm not an ISO member, but ISO-PICOSA, if it was difficult to begin with to make sure that people weren't selling across borders with documents, how will you maintain your ability to generate revenue when you're just talking about data points? Another thing too is, how do you turn it off? And when I say it, I think that we're still defining what it is, but once something gets out there, it's really hard to work it back. So in the presentations earlier, I was really glad to see that the commercial considerations were part of the roadmap for ISO. But for some of us, we're there right now, and we have to really make sure that we're communicating as an industry. And when I say industry, I'm talking about standards developers, whether you're a national standards body or you're an SDO like ASTM, just be prepared for that. And then really a concern for me is, what does attribution look like to the original document? So if ASTM publishes a document D86, somebody needs section 3.1, sentence 3, and it's been pushed out through a software provider, it's in somebody's PLM. How does anybody know that it's an ASTM document? How am I supposed to generate revenue off of other commercial activities like technical training and proficiency testing if I can't know that at the end of the supply chain, somebody knows it's an ASTM document? And the final part, I'll say this because my 5 minutes are up here, but what are customers really willing to pay? From a real world perspective, when we launched our Redlines product for comparing one version against the other for ASTM, we were able to enjoy a 10% increase because the workflow and the productivity improvement was there for customers and members. I'm seeing about the same type of trend happening with this conversation. I believe customers will look at this as a workflow enhancement. I don't believe that there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow from a commercial perspective with this yet, but I'm willing to work with other organizations. And if people would like to engage with ASTM and talk about how our intellectual property could be involved in topics you hear today, I hope you come to the table with at least having some kind of idea of an answer to some of these questions, because it's something that our industry is going to have to know before we give rights to people. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Pablo, who's going to be interviewing our colleague from AFNOR, Raul. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate the opportunity today. Thank you.
Summarizing everything. So we are going to start with a short interview. I'm going to ask Raul some questions. And first of all, Raul, welcome for joining us. And first of all, you have invested a lot of effort in developing added value products. Launched those added value products more than 1 year ago. I want you to make a short explanation, presentation about these added value products. And my first question is, what are the main user needs that these added value products are called?
Okay. Well, thank you, Pablo, and thanks all for the opportunity to be here. As you said, we launched the requirement service 1 year ago within our platform, especially COVAS. We have presented already this platform and how the service worked last year. Well, I want to talk about the business model. The model is pretty easy, actually. It's just a percentage that we add according to what they are paying to the French collection. In average, it's like plus 10%. And if they are getting like another added value product like Redlines, we make like a package of 15% Redlines and requirements. Like basically, that is the business model within the subscriptions. Regarding retails, it's the same. We add only a percentage of the price of the single standard. And we notice actually that all the clients are getting the standards with requirements, for example, is 1 out of 2 of web stores. So that means that the service is something that the client is looking for. But about that, the needs that I think that cover is that we had, it's mainly that helps clients to easily read the standard, especially those clients who are not experts in standardization. Okay, that's really important. But also that this service saves time when reading it. It doesn't mean that the clients don't have to read the complete standard. We talk about already, I think, but that helps to go to the clients to the essential part of within the standard or the chapters that have more the requirements.
So Raul, that is exactly what that was your intention in the beginning. So you wanted to cover these things that you explained. But what was at the end of the history the feedback that you get from users of these added value products?
Well, actually, we did a survey this year for especially for COVAS users that are using the requirement. We had the pandemic, and you know, as that was a quite complicated year. But for us, also we have the cyber attack. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, but that's really a hard year for APNO. But even though we had a really good feedback for clients that are using the requirement service, actually 90% of the respondents, they said that it was a service that saves the time. And we identify actually 5 key points that they gave us. Like, first of all, as I already mentioned, it is quick reading for the requirements. That helps for a product verification, but also helps to target and identify the chapter that they have the more requirements, the most important chapters within the standard. Also have helped clients to create an audit in order to effectively implement the standard, but also training the teams internally. So getting all the important information within the standard. And finally, that this service helps to the question of evaluation forms to ensure that the content of this process, some procedure within the standard meets all the requirements. And we already knew that because it's something actually we received another feedback by saying that they would like to be able to export these elements in Excel format or Word in order to create a conformity assessment plan. So it is actually in our to-do list. We would like to do that, but first step, it's only the requirements to be able to create the requirements like really, you know, like as much accurate as possible.
So those are the voices of the current customers, the customers that you have ready, so that they can compare the previous solution with the new solution. But the last question I have is, what about potential new customers? Is this new solution helping you in attract new profiles, new customers profiles?
I don't think we are getting like attracting new profiles of clients, but I think it's more like create loyalty for our current clients. We noticed that they, and also the feedback that we received, that they identify APNO as innovative, and that we are helping her to do it to satisfy their needs regarding the reading of the standards, etc. We also think that we are trying to help clients to develop their activity towards international markets by creating new platforms and creating new service with the content that we have. There is still a lot to be made, I think, as we already mentioned in the whole conference today. Especially we have like more collections in EXME formats, more readable formats, or smart standards. So I think we can create more content and more services.
After hearing, I have a lot of questions, but now I have to pass the next. I think it's you, Marian, or
Yes,
you,
thank you,
Marian?
Pablo.
Okay, because I don't know if it's Marian. So Marian, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pablo and Howard. And I'd like to welcome Mike Arnold from UL Underwriters Laboratory. We already met in the chat. Hi, Mike, welcome.
Hi, Marian.
Hi. Mike, as a certified body and customer of standards, how have your expectations changed of STO during the transformation process of our industry? And what have you learned from our customers as well?
Yeah, definitely. So before I answer, I just want to ensure that the audience understands where I'm coming from and the perspective that I'm taking. So back in 2011, Underwriters Laboratories actually split. So UL LLC, which is a company I'm a part of, was recently a for-profit entity. And so if you think about the not-for-profit, which is your standards development organization, the education, the advocacy, et cetera, I'm actually a part of UL LLC, which is the testing, inspection, and certification. So like you said, we're customers of much of the people in the audience today and on this call. So as a customer of an SDO, though, it's imperative that we get high quality data to act upon. So a lot of the speakers today have really touched on this point. But as industry accelerates and the creation of new products and services occurs, regulations and standards need to keep up. So they increase in complexity and number. And so when we have this complexity added, it reduces our ability to serve our customers unless we really have that intelligent and scalable solution ready for them. What this means is metadata like attributes, context, materials, et cetera, that are needed to successfully build those intelligent systems need to be readily available for us, so that we can then give insights to our customers on how to successfully build their product or make it safe and legal to sell wherever they want to go. So what we don't get from SDOs today, though, is that type of metadata, that specific intelligence that we need just past, that step 0 of that paper document that we saw earlier in a diagram. And the thing that comes up that Jim touched on is there's a plethora of data formats. You have PDF, you have XML, HTML, JSON, RSS. We really need the SDOs to start increasing and bettering their technology and their data formats so that we have machine readable formats that we can actually build into our algorithm development to help deliver those insights to customers on our own digital platforms. I really mentioned earlier, I really like Sergio's diagram where they go from step 0 of the paper documents to step 5 of that machine interpretable content. And if I look at industry today, where a lot of my customers are coming to UL, a lot of them are already on step 3, 4, and 5, right? Especially when you start looking at the big players in the market and the large corporations and manufacturers, et cetera. And so in summary, the expectations from the SDOs is, let's stop being reactive to the market. Can we start being more proactive, right? And look at how can we provide those standards in machine readable format? How can we provide the metadata? And I know we're going to talk about that more, that we really need to further, our mission, to make the world a safer place and to establish, product safety in the marketplace better.
Metadata, Mark, and a lot of the panelists today did before. So do you recognize, or would you say and interpret there is a kind of shift from the relevance of content to metadata or smart or granular data?
Absolutely. So general content is great. It's great to have that document, that, the standard. We can read through it, we understand it, et cetera. It takes a lot of time to do that. It takes expertise to do that, et cetera. The metadata and the contextualization are really big value drivers for us and for customers. So the better the data, the better insights we can deliver to our customers. So for example, to be able to tell a customer that, a particular standard applies to their product is great. But what's even more valuable is to give them the rationale and the reasoning and the specific part of that standard that applies to their product, because we know what their product's made out of, what materials or what components or what technology is embedded in that product. And so with that metadata, it helps us link that to the product more specifically in a more scalable manner. It also lets us to create dynamic solutions that allow us to determine real-time impacts to design choices. So if you think of product development, instead of developing your product and then handing it off to a certified body or a testing lab to understand what standards applies to it, in real time, you saw some of this with the 3D modeling and the CAD implications. You can actually tell a customer, oh, that's a bad design choice because, standard X says you need to comply with X, Y, Z, right? And so, if we go back to like Sergio's diagram on step 3 for the machine readable format, we really want that metadata and that semantic enriched standards to facilitate all of that work for our customers. And just to drive this point home, it's not just always about data, it's really about bringing the customer-centric approach to the table and how we look at how do we build our business models and our processes and how do we go to market. We really need to make sure that it's customer centric, customer friendly, because these are the same people that sit on are standard development boards. Really, they're your customers that you're serving also. And so we want to make sure that everybody's happy.
That's an interesting and relevant point. Maybe it's leading to the question of business models. If we reach the new dimension of the relevance of metadata, how do you envision the democratization of data between the traditional business models of standard industry coexisting, or maybe, like Jim pointed out before, in those evolution steps?
Yeah, so my answer might be a bit radical for the current state of industry. But like I said earlier, our mission at UL is to make the world a safer place, right? And it's similar probably to a lot of people here. And so the big challenge that you come across when you talk about, data in our business model is how do you successfully, fulfill your mission while also generating revenue, right? How we got to keep the lights on as we're making the world a safer place. Otherwise, we can't make the world a safer place, right? And so this is where I believe the standards industry really needs to start to evolve. In my personal experience talking with many of the SDOs, a lot of you are actually investing in your own digital platforms, or if you're not, the reason is because the price of entry or in the investment in the technology or resources is too high. And this is where you need to take a step back and realize, what type of player are you in this space? You don't have to be both a digital player and an SDO. You can develop partnerships with those SDOs that have invested in the technology. Like as a product manager at UL, my end goal is customer satisfaction and customer safety. And Jim alluded to this. Customers will pay a premium for a high quality experience. So if you think about this, if you let those SDOs or those partners like certified bodies that have digital platforms recoup the cost of actual data management through their software licensing or that customer experience they want to deliver that customer need. You can actually use your data as the cost of entry to, say, that individual on their platform to help enrich your data, help bring it to the market. And then what happens is that platform becomes a channel partner for you. You can recoup your revenue that you typically get from the sale of your standards, just through that standards partner. It could be pass-through business. Such as myself, I'm developing a platform. I'm not interested in actually getting the revenue from standards. I'm actually interested in providing my customers with the experience they need to bring products to the market. I don't care if I make money off of your standards. You can have all that money. I don't need it, right? I'm really trying to fulfill my mission and actually bring more business to my company, which is testings, inspections, certifications. And this is where I think everybody needs to understand the role they play in the digitization and the transformation of the industry. You can be a standards developer, you can be a certifier, you could be a digital platform, a digital enabler. But the real thing is you don't have to be every single one of those. Your company just needs to understand the role they want to play and then go after that and create the partnerships to really enable that transformation.
You mentioned high quality experience, high quality data. Do you have any first examples or definitions? What is this for you, for your special business?
So when we talk about contextualization, when we talk about metadata, et cetera, I've talked with Jim quite a bit around this topic of what information can standard, bodies give us to help deliver more quality for our customers. You talk about algorithms and how you build algorithms and you apply the data to products. You really need to know what attributes, what materials, what context, like age grading a standard might apply to really successfully determine what actually applies to the customer's product from a scalable approach. You can't always have humans involved in the loop. Otherwise, the rate that industry is evolving, the rate that industry is introducing new products, you'll never keep up with it. That's why I really like the approach that Siemens is taking with digital twin and things like that. We talk about digital twin and we talk about data. It's not always just about data, but it's also about how you guys are authoring your standards. If in your standards, you're always mandating that physical testing takes place, we're missing the point here. Think about a world where digital twins exist. We have standards that actually help determine what needs to be tested on that product, but you never really have to physically test the product. You reduce on this testing and inspection and certification side, you reduce the need for physical labs or physical testing places. You reduce the carbon footprint, right? You increase turnaround time so you can ensure more products are safe reaching the market. There's a lot of actual trickle down effect within the business when we talk about what does high quality do for you. to something as extreme as, well, we could actually solve some of our sustainability issues and environmental issues because it's less buildings that we have to maintain, it's less energy that we're consuming, et cetera. So it's actually just a really interesting point of view that you can take to the market.
So one last question, please. What possible changes for your business models do you see? Do you see more challenges or more chances? In which way would you describe that?
Yeah, and so I think it's an amalgamation of my last responses. I know we're already at time, so I'll really quickly answer this, right? But it's all about scalability, throughput, especially from the customer side. They need to move fast. We need to enable them to move fast. Like I said before, the standards industry is always reactive. You're always doing something because a customer is doing something. And I think it's time that the standards industry starts to evolve and put that thinking cap on and think of where are our customers heading and try and be more proactive in it, right? I really liked the Henry Ford quote that was up at the beginning of the presentation because it drives home a message. And that message is, we really need to be transformative, right? And how do you actually transform your industry? Not just do the same thing better with technology. And I think that's where people get confused when they think of digital transformation. They always think, I'm going to do what I do now, just better with some technology. They're not really truly transforming their industry into what it's going to be tomorrow, right? After all, Henry Ford didn't change the world by making horses faster. He really kind of thought outside of the box, right? And created something new that brought to the market that people didn't even think they needed. And I think there's some of that needs to breathe new life into the industry and how we go to market and how you think of serving customers in the future.
Thank you so much, Mike. An exciting talk. Handing over to Jim and Michael now.
Okay, great. Waiting for my buddy, Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson.
I'm here.
Oh, good. There you are.
Here I am.
See you, Michael. I think that Michael is joining us. Where are you joining us from today, Michael?
Live from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, where it's a little after 9 p.m.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us. I hope you've had some dinner and some nice experience.
I'm just hanging out in my hotel room in my blazer, as I usually do after dinner.
The robe's coming next, Michael. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Michael Thompson, for those who don't know, is the Director of Publishing and Information Products at SAE International, based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're going to ask a couple of questions of Michael today about his SAE OnCue product. And that's a digital standard system that provides the accessible and interoperable standards that the industry has been waiting for. So, Michael, just a few questions for you about the OnCue product. What brought you guys at SAE to this point with your digital content, and what was the customer need you identified to invest, which I'm assuming there was a significant investment in this direction. What drove you to that?
Yeah, there was certainly a significant investment, and as many of you are probably aware, our two industries, the industries we serve at SAE, are ground vehicles and aerospace. And the aerospace industry in particular had been working on standards as digital data for the better part of a dozen years or even longer. Some of you may have been involved in those conversations with the likes of Boeing and Airbus and many others over the years. And we participated along with other STOs like ASTM, like AIA, and a number of others. But I think what the tipping point finally became was the introduction of more software on their end with model-based systems engineering and digital twin and that sort of thing. Once we saw that the OEMs in aerospace in particular and the larger suppliers were investing in the digitization of their content, we understood it was time for us to do that as well. And the way we went about that was to just go out and meet with as many of those customers as we possibly could to understand their use cases.
Thanks for that, Michael. So obviously you're going out, you're meeting with customers. You guys have a really great subscription product already in SAE Mobilis. How does the conversation differ with regards to your traditional salesperson going out there and talking about, do you want a subscription to SAE content, as opposed to, wow, this is a whole new different conversation that you may or may not have people that on your staff that are able to have that conversation. So what's the experience been for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it obviously is a very different way of going to market. I will say that for the most part, as we've heard from other speakers earlier, we're early days into all of this. We just launched OnCue at the beginning of this year. It's been in development for the better part of a year prior to that. But we understood from customers, even as we were developing OnCue, that they are not ready to give up PDFs yet either. So what they see is, at least in the early going, is taking an OnCue digital solution while simultaneously still holding on to the PDF. We imagine that we will evolve away from that as more and more people are comfortable. And I think the other thing that you said earlier, Jim, was very true, that there are people that are understandable and willing to embrace the technology and the models and the use cases that this provides. And when you find those people in an organization, in terms of going to market, it's very easy. We get a lot of excitement, basically, from industry, that we are able to take content that's been in standards, and I'm talking about data and requirements that are in narrative form in a PDF or in tabular form in a PDF, and now they're in a structured database, and they can be delivered via an API directly to third-party software systems like an ERM or a product lifecycle management system, a CAD system, wherever our customers want to interact with that content. And that was the use case that we kept hearing. And so they're very excited about that concept. But I think what we find is, in addition to the resources that we have now, we need resources that can talk about software as a service, that can help our customers. So not only are you talking to maybe your information technology people and your procurement people and your librarians and whomever when you're selling the PDF service, but now you're also talking potentially with more of the IT partners on the customer end in terms of building out the API and connecting our data to their content. In some cases, you are talking to a third-party vendor, like the vendors of ERP and PLM systems, because you have to bring that into the equation, because that's where the customer wants to interact with the content.
That's great, Michael. Thank you. And, I think we can agree that there's a huge buzz around digital transformation right now. And I'm so glad you said what you said about when you have it and when you sell it, who's supporting it from even your own back end. And that's part of the conversation that, I want to be part of the questions that need answers here, because just because you build it and you have it out there, back end systems in-house might have to change to support that. So it's a real, not just any one part of the organization conversation. So I'm glad you touched upon that, because being able to support this advanced conversation is not something that we as SDOs most of the time are going to have the skill sets to be able to handle. So thank you for your comment there.
Yeah, if there are other SAE folks on the phone, they're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I'll date myself and tell you that I remember when the internet was brand new, and I worked in business-to-business publishing back then. And part of the transformation back then from print and DVD to online was you had to sell your customers on the value of what the online platform conveyed along with the content you were selling. And I think we're at a similar juncture here in terms of going to market. There are people in organizations that love this idea. They've been waiting for it. I'm sorry I joined this a little bit late. I wish I had heard some of the use cases from the customers, but I imagine you heard some of those same use cases from the customers that were on earlier. And I think you'll find champions in the organizations, but those champions in your customers' organizations are also going to ask you, the SDO, to help them sell this solution into the organization, help to convey the value. And I think, the value has been touched upon. It's all about reducing their product life cycles, their safety, the reliability of their products, cost efficiencies, and so forth. It's the same concepts that we have with the PDF, but there's just a lot more direct input to their processes. and it helps speed up their processes.
Well, great, Michael. And this is one of the reasons that we're partnering with you on the exploration down this path, because you are curious about the same type of questions. You are worried about your core businesses. You're worried about the revenue impact. So I appreciate your perspective on all this, and want to thank you for your time and recognize another 20+ year person in the commercial part of the standards business. It's nice to have another one of us on the panel today. So I appreciate your time and have a great time in UAE and be safe. I'll turn that over to Lakshmi now, who will jump in with some questions. So thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you very much to all of our panelists. This was a great discussion. I know that it's one that has been of utmost importance as we talk about technology, just how it actually integrates into our respective business models and how customers receive that technology. So I'm going to jump in with a few questions. It seems that Jim's slide with the questions has generated some buzz. So this one's coming from DIN Software. I do agree with Jim that there will be no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. The same applied 20 years ago when PDF started to replace paper. What may be more appropriate is to think that, as an example, XML-based content or service provision to customers will help making sure that we stay relevant to users and industry. So I see this as an evolutionary process where we and our customers move together to achieve a new level of standards usage in a digital economy. What would be the alternative?
So I don't think there's an alternative. I agree with the evolution that we're seeing here, but I'm also well aware of the investment that it will take for organizations to move forward in this direction. And inevitably, people will be looking to the commercial part of the business for the ROI on the investment. And what I'm getting at is we don't know what it's going to be yet. So there are 300+ SDOs, NSBs around the world. All of them will be going at their own pace. I believe that, whoever asked the question, I think we're on the right path. My concern is that we control it as the IP owners before other software providers decide how it's going to be disseminated. The oil and gas industry has already been doing this for years. They use IBM doors, they use other ways. So, we just have to be careful that we maintain the intellectual property control, and then also realize that in order to achieve some of these initiatives, you have to have organizational wide change, and that's going to be expensive as well. Technical committee operations, things like that have to change. So it's just a big investment, and inevitably somebody somewhere is going to be looking for the return on investment. And I'm just saying that we have to be careful. This is going to take time to get there.
Great, thank you. And I think on that same train of thought, there's a question from ASME. Even before we talk about ROI, it seems a fundamental question to ask what level or fragment would be considered usage of a standard or still considered IP and protectable. And so I think this is probably a question for Jim, if you want to start, and then others who want to jump in as well.
Yeah, sure. I know who asked that question, and we've debated it before. I don't necessarily have an answer right now, because I've been writing notes all over the place today based on everybody's presentations, and I'm looking at it from a couple of different perspectives. I've had the opportunity to be at ASTM for 16 years and be involved in not just the commercial business, but the global outreach, the MOU agreements, different things like that. And so I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles here. I don't know what part or when. I just know that if we don't have controls in place and our intellectual property gets out and we can't point back to it, there's just going to be a tremendous amount of confusion and turmoil, especially for legal and compliance reasons. So if anybody else from our session has a comment on that, I'm happy to open it up. But for me, I worry about the revenue part of this and it getting out of control before we actually have a plan for it.
Yeah, this is Michael. If I could chime in too, I think that I share your concerns, all of them. I think the other concern is if there isn't attribution to any one standards organization or national standards body or whomever, it makes it that much harder eventually, ultimately, to recruit people to write standards. As you know, we move from one generation to the next, and you know, if a younger generation of engineers and so forth isn't aware of standards or how they're developed or where they come from, I think there's that added challenge on top of what you listed too. And I don't have a good way of good answer to how do we overcome that, but it's very much on my mind.
Great, thank you both very much. Michael, this question's for you at SAE. So this is a three-part question. One from Den, do you already sell access to your content database? What is the path SAE Global is taking to develop a model for smart standards? Or have you already developed that model and are using it?
Okay, so we are already selling what we call our digital standards. It's the OnQ solution, and there are a couple of ways that we're going to market with it. I mentioned the API, which we think is the predominant way people want to take delivery of the content. Again, so OnQ really consists of a structured database that houses the data elements and the requirements of the standards, and people can set up an API and funnel that content to their software that they're already using, because that's what we heard resoundingly from customers is do not give us another piece of software to work with. Make sure that your content works with all the software we're already using. The other thing that we offer is a web application, and you can see that if people are curious, you can go to the SAE website and look at OnQ. There's a video of what that application looks like, but it goes through some of the use cases and so forth. And I'm sorry, Lakshmi, it's late, so you're going to have to can you give me some of the other points of the question?
Yes. So I think the other question was, what is the path SAE Global is taking to develop a model for smart standards?
So I don't know. I don't know whether, I mean, we call our solution digital standards. We have been involved in conversations with all of you about smart standards, and we are very much interested in working with other SDOs and national standards bodies on a smart standards model, whatever that turns out to be. We were just encouraged, in fact, urged by the aerospace industry to move ahead with this model. So I'm a bit of a neophyte when it comes to smart standards. I need to understand more about what we as the standards industry are trying to develop in that regard. But I would, I'd embrace those conversations, and I know my other colleagues at SAE would do the same.
Great, thanks, Michael. And this last question is more of a comment from IFAN, but it kind of generate some questions. So anyone on the panel that wants to jump in and answer this or speak to it, please feel free. Thanks to Jim for some excellent questions, which I hope everyone involved in smart standards has asked themselves at every step of the way. The key one to me is the customer user-driven? The Henry Ford quote is a bit of a blind, as there are many users for whom smart standards will not be appropriate. My worry is that they will be left behind and their requirements will be ignored. What do you guys have to say to that comment?
Well, I'm happy to go. That's why I did the slide that I did, is because we are responsible for 148 different industries. We have people all along the evolution. I can't say, for years people said that paper would be gone, that PDFs would be gone, replaced by XML, HTML. We're still selling a good amount of paper. We're still selling our PDF documents. The usage encompasses 50% PDF, 50% HTML. So, I agree with that. I believe it's a comment instead of a question. But it is up to us as organizations to realize that not everybody is going to need this or want this, and we're going to have to support this, and it's going to be expensive to support it many different formats over the years. We should continue to evolve like we always had, but we have to be aware that there's going to be members and customers of our organizations that just won't be there wherever there is. So my colleagues, if you have any other comments, please jump in.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in here for a second. It's much easier to advance digitally and then still serve the customers that haven't evolved from a digital perspective, right? If you have smart standards, you can always make a quote unquote dumb standard and print it out on paper and give it to somebody, right? But it's very hard to traverse it the other way if you don't evolve and you're stuck on your PDFs or paper standards to serve the customers that are digital, right? So there's more cons to staying in the paper age, right? Rather than evolving to digital, where evolving to digital lets you serve all of your customers, no matter what stage they're in, right? But if you stay in that stage 0 or that stage 1 or stage 2, it's impossible to serve your customers in 3, 4, and 5. So I think, it's just a different perspective you have to take when you look at the problem and serving your customers as a whole population.
And Mike, I'd like to agree with you there. I'd also like to say that it's expensive from an organizational standpoint to have everybody move and not see the ROI. I keep going back to the ROI because executives are saying things and at some point they're going to be looking at the bottom line. So we just have to be aware. I agree with you 100%. We have to continue to move. But unfortunately, for the majority of NSPs and SDOs, we have to continue to support multiple things. And getting there faster, I would love that. I would love that, but it's going to be hard for me to justify certain things if I can't. It's a chicken egg, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's a real tough conversation because people don't necessarily have the money to invest in what might not take off. Just remember this, some parts of this might not take off. Like for example, we might not have done the HTML the way we did it before because now PDF can have the same type of workflow improvement tools. Now, I wish we knew that 5 years ago and we spent X amount of $1 million on that part of our digital transformation. But I think for especially smaller organizations, it's going to be tough to bring them along, without some problems along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point. And I'll go back to the comment that I made that you kind of have to decide what player you want to be in the space, right? You're going to have the players in the standards industry that want to jump into the blue ocean and test it out and invest the money in the technology, while you're going to have the people that trail behind, right? And I think, a perfect example of this is the standard aggregator model, right? You have your IHS, SAI Global, TechStreet, et cetera. They've acted as this medium to get standards out to customers because in the past, SEOs didn't have the means to do it, right? Now, when you look at the standard, bodies, they're starting to develop their platforms. They're starting to become aggregators themselves. You guys are starting to formulate partnerships between one another, right? To the point that aggregators, as we knew them or know them today, don't have a business in the future potentially, right? And it's the same way here. Just because you're not involved on the technology now doesn't mean you can't find the proper partnerships, or collaborations to bring yourself to the digital age. You might not have to invest the money. There might be a different way to the market. And then as technology advances, that trailer actually comes along when it becomes more cheaper and affordable to adopt that technology. And then, those blue ocean guys that went to the market with technology, you're going to find yourself in the aggregator position now where I'm becoming irrelevant. Now I'm going to have to transform and reinvent myself again.
Yeah, and just one last comment. This is a great conversation, and I totally agree with that. And that's why I was stressing earlier in my slides that the IP owners need to be aware of who they're giving permissions to and to. So I can't stress that enough. And we do get approached constantly. And as an organization, we are being extremely selective because once again, we need to know what's happening with this. We need to know where it's going. And I agree in the progress. I agree in all of it. I just need to know how I can maintain a stream of revenue to keep our organization thriving.
100%.
Well, and I think, to Jim's point earlier, the chicken and egg, it sort of is, that's the crux of the conversation a lot of the time, is that many of these organizations that have to move in this technology-driven direction do sustain themselves by generating revenue. So it's a self-supporting model. And there's not usually grants and other things that come about in order to just try a technology and then see how it works in the marketplace, because there is an expectation that there's revenue generated as a result of the technology that you spent money on putting out there. So I think this is always a really interesting conversation. It gets really fun to talk about, a little heated. So it's always a fun one. One more question for Michael Thompson. Michael, about how much effort is required of an SDO to do the semantic enrichment and data extraction on their own. Can most SDOs do it themselves, or do they need to enlist an outside help or partnerships?
Yeah, great question. And I think this may touch on something that Sebastian was asking earlier. So we did work with an outside partner, and we developed a proprietary algorithm that extracts the content from our standards. And so it was a development effort with a software company that we use here based in Pittsburgh. They were actually a startup out of Carnegie Mellon University. And so, we worked with them to model the standards, model the standards requirements and data, and develop that algorithm.
Thanks, Michael. Sorry, I was having trouble
Sure.
unmuting.
No, it happens to all of us.
I know, sometimes it just will not unmute for me. Okay, so I think that is the end of our Q&A for this session. If there's anything else, let me see. Nope, I don't see anything else coming through here. Well, thank you guys very much for this very interesting and conversation-provoking panel. With that, I think we've come to the end of our first day at the Standards Technology Forum, our virtual forum. Thank you to our friends in Berlin for staying with us and answering all these questions. And we've finally got the audio under control over there. We're looking forward to a really good day tomorrow. So we will see you guys tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time and 1:30 CET. So have a great day or night, and looking forward to a great day tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
We now have, we got another